Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because stories like this don't just happen once. They stay with you. They unfold slowly. And sometimes, they change everything you thought you understood about a single moment. Now let me tell you about a quiet afternoon that started like any other, and ended up shifting two lives in ways neither of them could ignore. Ethan Walker had always believed that the most important moments in life announced themselves. That they came with raised voices, dramatic turns, or obvious choices that demanded an answer. He was wrong. That realization didn't arrive loudly. It arrived on a quiet Thursday afternoon in Oregon, wrapped in sunlight and dust motes, carrying the faint smell of old books and brewed tea. An ordinary day. An ordinary favor. Or so he thought. Ethan hadn't planned on staying long. He'd only stopped by his grandmother's small house to help her prepare for a community fundraiser. The kind she volunteered for every year without fail. Folding chairs. Decorations. Donation boxes. All the little things she insisted she could do herself, but never actually did. The house itself was familiar in the way childhood places always are. Low ceilings. Soft carpets. Furniture that had been rearranged a dozen times but never truly changed. The walls held framed photos of family gatherings, birthdays, and holidays stretching back decades. It was comforting. Predictable. Until he stepped into the living room and saw her. Clare Dawson was already there. She stood near the window, carefully sorting through boxes of decorations. Her movements calm and deliberate. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains and settled across her shoulders, turning her hair a soft gold at the edges. She looked up when she heard Ethan enter, and smiled. That same gentle smile she always wore. The one that never felt rushed, never forced, as if she moved through the world at a pace entirely her own. "Hi, Ethan," she said warmly. Her voice was just as he remembered it. Soft. Steady. Quiet in a way that made people lean in instead of tune out. He returned the greeting, polite but friendly, just as he always did. Nothing unusual. Nothing that hinted at how aware he suddenly felt of her presence in the room. Clare had always been part of the background of his life. His grandmother's closest friend. A familiar face at holidays, fundraisers, and neighborhood events. Someone kind. Someone dependable. Someone he tried very hard not to think about too deeply. There was something about Clare that made her feel slightly out of place in the modern world. Not outdated, just unhurried. She listened more than she spoke. She noticed small things. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. And Ethan had always sensed that calm strength in her. Even if he couldn't quite explain why it stayed with him longer than it should. They worked side by side, sorting decorations and chatting lightly. Clare joked about how she had never been good with arts and crafts. Even though Ethan could see she was doing just fine. He laughed, bending down to retrieve a ribbon that had slipped from the box. And that's when everything changed. The sound came first. A sharp slide of fabric against carpet. Ethan looked up instinctively, just in time to see Clare's foot twist on the edge of a loose rug. She didn't scream. She only gasped. But that sound hit him like a jolt of electricity. Before his mind could catch up, his body reacted. He lunged forward. He caught her by the arms just as she lost her balance. Clare's breath hitched sharply. Her knees buckled beneath her. Ethan moved quickly, guiding her back until her shoulders met the wall behind her. His hands tightened instinctively, steadying her weight, anchoring her before gravity could finish what the rug had started. "It's okay," he said quickly. "I've got you." He hoped his voice sounded calm. It didn't feel calm. Clare tried to place weight on her foot. The moment she did, her body tensed. A quiet, pained sound slipped from her lips. Not loud, not dramatic, but enough to make his grip firm instinctively, afraid she'd fall again. "Wait," she whispered. I can't move." The words themselves were simple. The way she said them was not. The room seemed to shrink around them. Suddenly, the rest of the world felt distant. Muted. Ethan became painfully aware of how close they were. The warmth of her arms beneath his hands. The way her breath brushed his collar as she tried to steady herself. The subtle tremor running through her body, part pain, part shock. Clare looked embarrassed. Her cheeks flushed. Her eyes flickered away from his, as if she didn't quite know where to look. She didn't pull away. She couldn't. And so she stayed there, lightly pressed against him, vulnerable in a way Ethan had never seen before. He kept talking softly, reassuring her again and again that she was safe, that he had her, that she wasn't going to fall. She nodded, but the tension in her body didn't fade. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I don't like being a burden." The words hit him harder than he expected. "You're not," he said immediately. "Not at all." And he meant it. She tried again to shift her weight. Her ankle trembled. She winced more sharply this time, fingers tightening reflexively into the fabric of his shirt. It wasn't intentional, just instinct. But that small pull brought him closer. Close enough that his heartbeat stumbled. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was real. And that was somehow worse. Ethan focused on one thing only, keeping her steady. "Lean on me," he said gently. "Just for now." She hesitated, then nodded. Slowly, she allowed herself to relax into his support. Her fingers remained lightly clenched in his shirt, as if she didn't fully trust her legs to cooperate yet. Sunlight shifted across her hair. Ethan forced himself not to stare. They moved slowly, painfully carefully. He suggested helping her to the sofa, and she trusted him without hesitation. Step by step, he guided her across the room, his hand firm on her back, hers gripping his arm. Every small movement sent a tremor through her. Every flinch made him pause. He spoke quietly, steadying her not just physically, but emotionally. She admitted she hated moments like this, hated feeling weak. "You're not weak," he told her. "Anyone could twist an ankle." She laughed softly, shaky but genuine. And when they finally reached the sofa, relief washed across her face as she sat down. The front door opened. His grandmother returned, cheerful and unaware. The spell broke. Claire released his arm quickly, smoothing her hair, straightening her blouse, trying to compose herself. Ethan stepped back, his pulse still racing far faster than it should have been. His grandmother fussed over Clare, wrapping her ankle, offering advice. Claire insisted she was fine. She wasn't fooling Ethan. When the room fell quiet again, Claire looked up at him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for catching me." Their eyes held for a second longer than necessary. Something unspoken passed between them. Something that neither of them understood yet. But both of them felt. The house didn't return to normal after that. Not really. Even as Ethan's grandmother moved around the kitchen, humming to herself and pretending everything was perfectly fine, the air in the living room felt different. Heavier, charged with something neither Ethan nor Claire knew how to name. Claire sat carefully on the sofa, her injured ankle elevated on a pillow, the bandage wrapped snugly but not too tight. She thanked Ethan's grandmother again for the ice and the wrap, her voice polite, composed, almost too composed. But Ethan noticed the small things. The way her fingers kept smoothing the edge of the blanket on her lap. The way her shoulders stayed slightly tense. The way her eyes followed him whenever she thought he wasn't looking. He sat in the chair across from her, trying to appear relaxed, but his body hadn't quite caught up with his mind yet. His heartbeat still felt louder than it should have been. His thoughts circling that moment against the wall over and over again. The accidental closeness. The way she had trusted him without question. The warmth that still lingered in his chest. When his grandmother finally excused herself to step outside and speak with a neighbor, the house grew quiet again. Not awkward. Intentional. Claire broke the silence first. "I'm really sorry about earlier," she said softly. "I didn't mean to make things uncomfortable." Ethan looked up immediately. "You didn't," he said. "I was just worried about you." She studied his face for a long moment, as if weighing something carefully. Then she smiled, smaller than before but more honest. "That means more than you probably realize." Something in her voice made him sit forward slightly. They talked then. Not about the fall. Not about the fundraiser. They talked about small things at first. How long it had been since they'd really sat down like this, how busy life always seemed to get. How strange it was that familiar people could still feel new if you paid attention long enough. The conversation drifted naturally, unforced. And with every passing minute, the invisible line Ethan had always kept firmly in place began to blur. Claire admitted she hadn't liked feeling helpless. "I'm used to taking care of things myself," she said quietly. When I can't, it reminds me how alone I really am sometimes. The words weren't dramatic. They didn't need to be. Ethan felt them settle somewhere deep inside his chest. You're not alone, he said before he had time to overthink it. She looked surprised. Not startled. Just caught off guard. I know, she said slowly. But it still feels different hearing it. Their eyes met again. This time neither of them looked away. The afternoon light shifted as the hours passed, turning softer, warmer. Ethan's grandmother eventually returned, announcing that the fundraiser prep could wait, and insisting Claire stay seated and comfortable. When the time came for Claire to leave, Ethan offered to walk her home. She hesitated, then nodded. Outside, the air was cool and quiet. Ethan stayed close, matching her careful pace, ready to steady her if she needed it. She leaned on him lightly, not out of necessity this time, but choice. Halfway down the sidewalk, she stopped. Ethan, she said. He turned toward her. I need to ask you something, she continued. And I need you to be honest. He nodded. Did that moment earlier feel different to you? There it was. The question neither of them had dared to say out loud. Ethan didn't rush his answer. Yes, he said finally. It did. She let out a slow breath, as if she'd been holding it in all day. Me too. They stood there quietly for a moment, the world moving around them while they remained still. I didn't expect it, Claire said. And I don't know what it means yet. I don't either, Ethan replied. But I know it wasn't nothing. That made her smile. A real smile. Not polite. Not careful. Just honest. They didn't kiss. They didn't make promises. They didn't need to. What they shared that afternoon wasn't loud or reckless or rushed. It was something slower, something built on trust, recognition, and a quiet understanding that sometimes the most important moments arrive disguised as accidents. As Ethan watched Claire walk the rest of the way home, he realized something had shifted permanently. Not because of a fall, not because of a touch, but because for the first time, he had stopped pretending not to notice what had been there all along. And Claire Dawson, calm, kind, quietly strong, had seen him too. Whatever came next would come in its own time. But neither of them would ever forget the day an ordinary afternoon changed everything. If this story stayed with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because moments like these deserve to be remembered. Sometimes the quietest days change us the most, and this was one of them.